Recording take 4 or 5. Welcome back. In video games, remastered that. Remove things fans love. Let's hope this goes well. I tested a small recording and it seemed to, so let's go.
On paper, remastering a beloved game should be an easy win. The work has literally already been done for you, and in theory, developers only need to provide a few touch-ups to the original title and call it a day. Of course, that's just not how video game development works at all, and the desire to improve upon what came before, or even worse, modernize aspects of a game, can result in changes that actually make fans pine for the older version without all of the new bells and whistles. Also, just a note before we begin, I'm going to be using remake and remaster interchangeably here, just so no one gets annoyed in the comments. Pretty much I'm talking about any game that had a re-release, so yeah, everything's fair game, just fair warning there. So with that in mind, I'm Josh from WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 video game remasters that removed things fans loved. Number 10, The Fog, Silent Hill HD Collection. When it comes to remastering games, one of the biggest mistakes developers make is thinking that just because they can, they should. In the case of the Silent Hill HD remasters, that mentality resulted in the team removing most of the fog effects present in the original games in favor of a cleaner look. Now, a little bit of background. With the early titles in this franchise, fog was utilized not only as an artistic flourish to give the town of Silent Hill a creepier, more surreal atmosphere, but also to mask the limitations of the hardware. With these being highly detailed and fully rendered 3D worlds, having fog heavily obscure most of the screen allowed the developers to hide loads in the environment and texture popping to create a more immersive world. With the jump to the PS3 and Xbox 360 era though, that limitation was no longer an issue. As such, the devs of the remasters removed this fog and rendered more of the environment, giving you a larger look at the levels, but in doing so, removing a key part of the atmosphere. Looking at the two side by side, it's clear which approach is more effective. After all, there's a reason that every person on the planet says, it's like Silent Hill out here, every time it's even a little bit foggy in real life. Number 9, DLC maps, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare. Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare Remastered is, by all accounts, an exceptional version of the iconic military shooter. Developers Raven Software are always a safe pair of hands for projects like this, and delivered a brilliant and beautiful update of a game that still played well a decade after it released. The reason it caused such a stink, though, came from larger, more nefarious business decisions surrounding the title. See, Activision knew that people would be clamoring to get their hands on a modernized version of COD 4, and as such held it hostage behind a special edition for Infinite Warfare, meaning that fans had to initially buy 2 games just to get access to this remaster. But this list is specifically about remasters that took things away that fans loved, and in this case, that's the DLC maps for the original game. See, COD 4 received a 1 map pack at launch, and with this being a remaster, it was assumed that those post-launch areas would also be included in the main package. After all, that's been the standard practice with remasters since, well, forever. Imagine BioWare remastering Mass Effect but still selling the DLC separately, or the same with Skyrim. You just wouldn't be able to fathom it, would you? Well, Activision being Activision, they kept the map pack as a separate purchase and actually set its price higher than what the expansion retailed for originally. What an insult. Number 8, The Good Jokes, Conquer Live and Reloaded. Conker's Bad Fur Day is one of the most iconic and infamous releases for the Nintendo 64. Arriving on the family-friendly system with a bang, this edgy platformer made a name for itself by being absolutely bursting with adult humor, violence, and sexual innuendo. Though it looked like another cuddly mascot game for the system, a parent buying this for their kid would be as much of a mistake as accidentally picking up Seth Rogen's Sausage Party and expecting some good, clean fun. So when the developer of the game, Rare, was purchased by Microsoft, fans were absolutely buzzing that the title would be remastered for the then new Xbox. It felt like the right kind of game that could excel on a console known for its shoot-em-ups and brutal ninja actioners. Unfortunately though, this project would turn out to be Conker Live and Reloaded, which remastered the original game but was actually more censored than the Nintendo version. Scenes were altered, swearing was cut, and the initially devised Uncut project turned out to be more hamstrung by Rare's new owners. Number 7, using Halo Reach's assets.
Ooh,
Halo
Justin, I love
Combat
this one.
Evolved Anniversary. Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary, it's safe to say, was a project that was cobbled together. The remaster of the iconic Xbox shooter should have been a love letter to fans, and while it didn't get everything wrong, it did very much feel like a quick cash-in. That rushed feeling is evident in the constant reuse of assets from other Halo games. Have a quick scan of Halo subreddits around the time of release, and you'll see plenty of people disappointed at this realization. Now, it does make sense for the developers on paper to want to match textures with designs that came after Combat Evolved, but in practice, it makes the game feel lacking in its own artistic backbone. Franchise-wide consistency might have been the aim, but Combat Evolved had its own identity that was slightly different than those later games, and you can't just throw in assets from Halo Reach or Halo 3 and expect the same magic to come through. It's not the end of the world, but it results in things feeling that little bit off, and Combat Evolved feeling that bit more generic. Number 6, skateboarding physics. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater HD. Now, the thing about Tony Hawk's Pro Skater is that the original games are so good, they have actually been remade twice. Unfortunately, it was second time's the charm with this project, as the first crack at it, a 2011 remake by developer Rob Modo, yes, that Rob Modo, the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5 Rob Modo, was an absolute trash fire. Where to even begin with what the team got wrong? Dreadful graphics, slow, dull gameplay, and a litany of glitches dragged this title down and made it a complete laughingstock upon release. The whole game kinda just feels like it was made for a $5 by people who had only played the original once 20 years ago. The worst part was that this was an Xbox 360 remake that somehow felt worse to play than the original PS1 release. And that's because when you're making a skateboarding game, you kinda need to nail the feel of the skateboarding, and this title, with its needless changes and wonky physics, felt like a cheap imitation, kinda like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater at home. Number 5, worst cutscene animation. Batman Return to Arkham. The general consensus around the Batman Return to Arkham remasters is that they're pretty good. In general gameplay, both Arkham City and Arkham Asylum look absolutely incredible, but when it comes to the remade cutscenes, that's where things fall down. Now, the issue here is down to the use of pre-rendered cutscenes in the original title. While it is impressive that the team was able to approximate in-engine what had to be pre-rendered back in the day, the same direction and attention to detail sadly wasn't present. Where the cutscenes in Arkham Asylum in particular were full of life and incredibly atmospheric, the new in-engine versions felt a little flat by comparison. Like Halo, this is another divisive element that has raged on the subreddits, with plenty of fans lamenting the new direction. And this is primarily down to the lighting, which is less dynamic and more unflattering than the original, and other changes, like Batman's new face, also change the vibe of certain scenes, particularly when he and the Joker first enter the asylum in that first game. There are certainly pros to being able to keep things consistent across gameplay and cutscenes, but in this case, the magic of the original version is somewhat lost. Number 4, the original client, Warcraft 3 Reforged. The saving grace of terrible remasters or remakes is that, at the very least, fans can simply return to the original game that they do love. Don't like the new character models in The Last of Us Part 1? Well, simply buy the PS3 or PS4 version. They're both readily available. Don't enjoy the new assets in Halo Combat Evolved? Well, no worries. The developers actually included the original game as part of the package and allow you to switch back to the regular
and get a new chair.
graphics at the push of a button. In the case of Warcraft 3 Reforged, though, simply ignoring the new version and sticking with what you liked wasn't possible. And that's because when this remake launched, a truly terrible title that managed to piss off its entire fanbase through a litany of unwanted changes and unfulfilled promises, it actually replaced the original servers of the original game, so even if you owned the classic version, you'd be forced to download Reforged instead and play on that client. This was the final straw for many fans who felt like they were being forced to play an inadequate successor. Number 3, multiplayer.
Wow.
Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 Remastered. We've already mentioned Activision's first attempt at remastering the beloved Modern Warfare franchise on this list, but their approach is so baffling that we just couldn't leave off
Josh
their
is not
other
going to be
core
surprised
remakes.
that Activision
So,
made this
first things first, Modern
this
Warfare 2
twice.
Remastered was nowhere near as sinisterly handled as the original game. This was its own standalone release, not tied to any other mainline title, and once again the quality of the remastering work was spot on. The only issue is that it was half of a remaster, as Activision decided to release the campaign and cut the multiplayer suite. You know, the thing that made Modern Warfare 2 so iconic in the first place. Now, the campaigns for these games were great, don't get me wrong, but let's face it, nobody bought the original remaster of Modern Warfare solely because of the single player. The whole appeal of these re-releases is the ability to relive the glory days of Xbox Live, fighting on maps that are etched into every gamer's brain. Allegedly, the multiplayer suite was fully remastered as well, but never released as Activision worried that it would cannibalize the player base of their mainline game. As such, we were robbed of this potentially amazing trip down memory lane. Number 2, the soundtracks. Grand Theft Auto The Trilogy, the Definitive Edition. Now, GTA's Definitive Edition certainly committed bigger crimes than removing some songs from the soundtrack. Hell, we've covered extensively the litany of bugs, changes, and mistakes present throughout these 3 poorly optimized titles, but in terms of things that were actively removed from the previous editions, the soundtrack songs shouldn't be overlooked. Licensed music is always a nightmare in video games, so it's probably no surprise that it was tough for Rockstar to get everything locked down for the next project. But this is Rockstar.
Left bumper,
if any
left
company
bumper,
could
bottom
rally the
bumper,
resources
right
and figure
bumper,
a deal
bottom,
out,
right
it's
bumper.
them. These
then
are some of the
up,
most beloved
down,
games
left,
of all time,
right.
repackaged for a new
Correct me
audience
if I'm
and
wrong,
given the
but I
title
think it's
of
something
Definitive Edition.
do
And there's
wrong
nothing
that.
definitive about a version that demonstrably
Again,
has
I remember
less
it by heart
content.
more
Again,
of
this
the
might seem minor to
doing
an
it
outsider,
than
but
saying
it's
it.
not.
So
Ask any fan of these games and they'll be able to reel off music
I
that
should probably do.
soundtrack their experience. The tracks are part of each title's identity, and to overlook that fact just feels lazy. Number 1, no factions. The Last of Us Part 1. The Last of Us Part 1 is an excellent
they had
remake.
multiplayer.
Despite the controversy pre-launch,
Well, I
this
didn't
is a
because
living
I watched
recreation
it
of
a
an
few times, but you get the
already
point.
near-perfect game. One that subtly updates the combat
that
and
one that
completely
was called at the
overhauls the
beginning. It
visuals,
wasn't.
imbuing the top-tier cinematics with an even more impressive range of human emotions. But as a replacement for the original The Last of Us, it can never be a worthy contender, and that's because it completely omitted an
I don't know if he
underrated
tried
and
to
overlooked
rape her
part of
or
that
if he tried.
experience.
I know he
That,
tried to
of course,
kill
being the
her.
factions multiplayer suite. Now, this is
But
kind of the
I don't know if
inverse
that's
of
what
the
he,
Modern
like,
Warfare 2
tried to kill
situation.
me.
Yeah, you might say that The Last of Us
Or I
would
think
still
it
be a beloved
implies
masterpiece if
that
it
he tried
only shipped with its
to
single
get
player. But the reality is, The Last of Us 1 was a
silent in the
bigger
next
package
scene and,
than
like,
just
you know,
that. For those of us who
anything
played
and-
and loved the intense multiplayer
know how
offering,
that
to see it
goes
completely
and all
left
that stuff.
behind, oi oi, for the
I know.
next-gen remake was just devastating. Yes,
That's what
it
it
is
feels
probably
like
because Naughty
in the
Dog
next
is cooking
game,
up a
especially what
spiritual
takes
successor
place,
to the
so-
original Factions mode to drop on the PS5.
Yeah.
But is that reason enough to completely sacrifice
How are you
this
supposed to
first
craft
effort?
in a
As you
game
can
and
probably
find the
guess, to
resource
me,
to
it
craft?
definitely is not. So, that's our list. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. What do you think
Multiplayer one.
about these remasters and remakes and these changes?
Hopefully, hopefully you guys enjoyed the story, the reaction, and as fresh. The other one might be because that'll be the second take I'd be doing on them if this one goes well. I'm gonna just end the year, let you go, nothing more. Yeah, I want to check to see if it go well. Hopefully you guys enjoyed.